Welcome to meeting number 5 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, January the 31st, 2022, the committee is meeting on challenges related to the recovery of the arts, culture, heritage, and sports sectors, which have been deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November the 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using Zoom. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, in light of the recommendations from health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on Tuesday, October the 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attended the meeting in person are to maintain a 2-meter physical distances, must wear a mask when circulating in the room, and it is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, and I like to add, including when speaking. One must use a hand sanitizer in the room. Now, as a chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I want to thank everyone for your cooperation. Now, for those participating virtually, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please let me know as soon as possible so that we can ensure that it's reinstated. And when speaking, please try not to do what I'm doing, which is speaking very, very quickly. Please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members should be addressed through the chair. This meeting will, in fact, be sort of cut short by 15 minutes because the committee itself has business to do. So I will ask those who are on virtual, because I think all our witnesses are on virtual, so that when the clerk asks you to leave, that you just quickly log out so we can get on with the meeting at hand for the business meeting. Thank you very much. And so we begin. And I will begin. I want to thank you all for taking the time to have input into this meeting. As you well know, it is a really important thing that we hear from you, that we get your sense of what worked, what didn't work, what you now need, and how to go on in the future to create a sort of resilient arts and culture and sport community. So I'm going to begin in order. As individual, we have Michael Rubinoff, producer, Canadian Commercial Theatre League. Now, all of this witnesses, you can only have one witness speak, or if you want to divide it up, it's up to you per organization. So you have 5 minutes to present. I will give you a 1-minute heads up so that you can wind up, and then you can answer some of the things you didn't get to say in your statement when you ask questions. So then we move to a question and answer section. So I will begin with Mr. Rubinoff for 5 minutes. Please begin, Mr. Rubinoff.
Thank you for the invitation to appear before the committee, and gratitude to the clerk and her team for their guidance and support. I'm a Toronto-based commercial theatre producer and representing the Canadian Commercial Theatre League, a relatively new organization. The live commercial theatre industry in Canada is made up of independent producers, producing organizations, presenters, and investors who generate and support the creation of new and existing theatrical work, and in the process employ thousands of artists, crew members, ushers, and administrative staff, and provide indirect employment to hotels, restaurants, and local retail. In addition, we support the not-for-profit sector by financially enhancing productions in these theaters and by commercially producing works started at not-for-profit theaters. Private money is raised to support capitalization costs for commercial theater, and that money is injected into the economy. Our only sources of revenue to meet our weekly operating costs is from box office sales. So the effects of COVID-19 on our industry have been catastrophic. I had the idea to create a musical based on the extraordinary humanity, kindness, and sense of community in Gander, Newfoundland, and Labrador on 9/11 and the days following. I'm the originating producer of Come From Away, the most successful Canadian musical in history. When COVID-19 gripped the world, 5 productions of the show in the US, UK, Australia, and in Toronto shut down. At home, our sector raised concerns that commercial theatre producers and presenters were not eligible for any emergency support under Canadian Heritage Relief programs. With international precedent in hand, we had numerous meetings with MPs, ministers, staffers, and bureaucrats pleading our need for emergency relief, tax relief, and/or a government-backed insurance program due to the loss of business interruption coverage as a result of a pandemic. We, like all other arts and culture organizations in this extraordinary moment, needed help. The Americans passed the Save Our Stages Act, which established the Shuttered Venue Operations Grant. Come From Away's Broadway and North American touring productions each received $10 million to support reopening and associated pandemic expenses. The Australian production received over 1.6 million Australian dollars from their Restart Investment to Sustain and Expand Fund. The London production benefited from tax relief measures implemented by the UK government, including a temporary reduction in the VAT. Commercial theatre producers and presenters were also eligible to apply for relief under the UK Culture Recovery Fund. Despite the lack of government support here at home, determined to reopen Come From Away in Toronto, $1.5 million in private money was committed, and with heightened risk, Mervis Productions reopened the show. Reopening coincided with the Omicron variant. 2 days after its reopening, the government of Ontario placed a 50% capacity limit on theatres, further eroding consumer confidence in attending theatre. After pausing the show due to cast illness and with no Canadian Heritage emergency supports available, the excruciating decision to permanently close Canada's most successful musical was announced on December 27, 2021. What was lost? Good paying jobs for those on stage and off, millions in HST revenue, and hundreds of millions of dollars in economic impact to the Toronto economy. Subsequent to the closing of the show, the current minister and his staff have been responsive and engaged in a number of robust conversations regarding support for the commercial theatre sector in Canada, and we are grateful for those ongoing conversations. Come From Away continues to run on Broadway in London's West End, on tour across North America, and recently wrapped up in Sydney and will reopen in additional Australian cities later this year. Come From Away is but one example of a number of shows in Canada that commercial producers and presenters have closed, postponed, or canceled at significant cost. We need a recognition of the economic impact of what we do, and we need the implementation of similar programs for our sector that have catapulted the for-profit film and television industry into one of the most successful in the world. We need to operate at 100% capacity or we further erode consumer confidence. To ensure our sector's sustainable recovery and to succeed now and in the future, we need immediate access to emergency COVID-19 funding, a government-backed insurance programs, tax credit programs in similar scope to what has been provided to the for-profit Canadian film and television production, support for encouraging diverse voices in the Canadian commercial theatre sector, and implementation of the recommendations proposed by the Creative Industries Coalition so that the skilled people that make theatre have financial security and wellness supports to continue in our industry. I'm grateful for the support the Government of Canada has provided to the arts and culture community and hope our recommendations for our sector are worthy of your support and implementation so that we can receive the necessary aid to continue our contributions to country and community. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubinoff. You were 1 minute under time, so that's really good. Pleased to hear that. And so now I'm going to go to Ms. Reeves, President and Chief Executive Officer for the Business Arts Community. Ms. Reeves, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, greetings, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am the President and CEO of Business and Arts, a charitable organization that has existed for over 40 years with a national mandate to work in partnership with arts leaders, government, and the business community to ensure a thriving arts and culture sector. Throughout the pandemic, thousands of not-for-profit arts organizations ranging from major cultural institutions to small community-led arts groups have turned to business and arts to help navigate the waves of closures, restrictions, digital pivots, and now for planning for safe reopening and to chart a path to recovery. Throughout the pandemic, BA, in collaboration with the National Arts Centre, has been running a research project called the Arts Response Tracking Survey, ARTS for short, which I'm going to tell you about today. Since the spring of 2020, the study has been conducted quarterly by Nanos Research as a way to gauge Canadian culture goers' comfort and perceptions around returning to indoor and outdoor arts and culture events, as well as museums and galleries. The data offers valuable insights to inform reopening procedures and programming models. We conducted the latest survey in December 2021 and released the report January 19th. In it, we're happy to show there has been a steady increase in the number of arts patrons returning to in-person events from just 6% in May 2021 to 27% in December who've already returned to indoor events and 35% who have returned to outdoor events. Meanwhile, 21% said they plan to return to indoor events immediately after cultural organizations are allowed to open. However, there is still a significant portion of culture goers who are hesitant to return, with 20% indicating they intend to wait several months before returning. And more troubling is the 24% who are so hesitant they are simply not sure when they might return, and 9% who say they never expect to return to indoor arts and cultural events. The data is similar for museums and galleries, with 34% who have already returned, 21% who intend to return immediately, and 15% who will wait several months. We still see, though, 24% who are not sure and 6% who say they never will intend to return. Not surprisingly, there are differences in the data when we look at demographics. The 18 to 34 age range group is more likely to say they will return immediately at 27% compared to those in the 55 plus age group, with only 16% who intend to return immediately. With higher COVID risks in the older population, we see 13% who say they never intend to return. So we are likely to see that the types of performances that attract younger audiences, for instance, popular music concerts, will likely see stronger ticket sales than those that skew to older demographics, which will likely struggle for much longer to see their audiences return. Fear is the biggest barrier to return, with 31% of respondents listing fear of being exposed to the virus as their top concern, and crowds or other people not respecting health measures as the second. Social distancing and masks continue to be the top precaution culture goers say they want to feel safe to return to indoor events. Arts and culture venues and facilities are doing an exceptional job of following all safety procedures, and many are exceeding mandated guidelines. Unfortunately, fear is a powerful deterrent that is not easily assuaged. So for 2 years, the public have been told to avoid social gatherings, and rolling closures have mandated the shuttering of theaters, performance halls, cinemas, art galleries, and museums. Thus, it's going to take a lot of time and effort to change public perception about the safety of these spaces. And with this data, what measures do the sector need to be viable during the reopening and recovery phase? Well, first, the arts data shows that we should anticipate a very slow and gradual return of audiences. It is reasonable to project a 3 to 5 year recovery timeline. And unfortunately, most arts organizations cannot break even with only a third of their audience intending to come back immediately. The sector needs support to offset the financial risks of getting back on stage or getting artworks into galleries when we know that revenues from ticket sales will be significantly smaller for the foreseeable future. Second, the sector needs support to rebuild consumer confidence. We need dedicated funds for a sector-led marketing and public relations campaign that shifts the perceptions about the safety of our venues and facilities and also reinforces the many benefits of arts and culture for physical and mental health, as well as for community well-being, inclusion, and belonging. And finally, as much as possible, the sector needs some semblance of predictability. And I know that none of us, including the government, has a crystal ball to predict future waves and the possible needs for closures. However, we can't keep lurching from one emergency short-term funding program to another to fill the gaps. What is needed is a comprehensive policy framework and corresponding support programs that are in place throughout that 3 to 5 year timeline and can be relied on, whether or not there are future COVID waves or other.
Please wrap up, Ms. Rees. Thank you.
Other type of crisis situations to affect the arts. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now move on to Canadian Live Music Association. Erin Benjamin, President and Chief Executive Officer. For 5 minutes, please, Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I'm Erin Benjamin, President and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association. Our membership includes both nonprofit and for-profit entrepreneurs and organizations who together create the conditions for an artist to stand on a stage in front of an audience. Venues, festivals and promoters, talent agents, service providers, and many others whose work intersects directly with and supports live music performance. I'd like to take my allotted time today to focus on one thing that we consider to be key to the long-term success of the music industry. A simple shift that will see us through COVID recovery and beyond, that if implemented will increase impacts for government and artists substantially. Canadian artists perform on all kinds of stages. Without what we would call for-profit venues and festivals, however, most artists would have significantly fewer places to play. But these businesses and other entrepreneurs in the live space are not currently eligible for Canadian Heritage programs as our nonprofit members are. In other words, funding categorically excludes essential spaces serving Canadian artists, which today especially seems an obvious gap. Coincidentally, it was 1 year ago today that we launched a social media campaign with the rally cry, #ForTheLoveOfLive, to amplify the crushing impact of COVID on our entrepreneurs, artists, supply chain, and on our reputation as a competitive world-class live music market. That campaign now, with a reach of over 65 million, spoke directly to everyday Canadians who were inspired to share stories and photos of how and why live music mattered to them. Government heard that united cry for help, diagnosed the indispensable nature of live music businesses, and provided the historic $50 million in temporary funding we saw in last year's federal budget, and we thank you for that. That support helped in two vital ways. It extended the lives of many businesses, and it signaled to our community the government believes live music companies and entrepreneurs matter. I can't tell you how meaningful it was to see the words live music venues in a federal budget. Like others in the broader sector who are already permanently at the heritage table, our members also undertake activities that are central to the development of Canadian artists, the promotion of their music, the expansion of their audiences. They work to ensure Canadians have access to a variety of professional artistic experiences, and they're key generators of both jobs and economic impact. In fact, as one of the hardest hit industries, the live music sector, all of us formally contributing upwards of $3 billion to GDP and creating 72,000 jobs, we can't wait to unleash the full spectrum of music and entertainment activity we create, so we can all begin to leverage the economic and social impacts that follow, from Alison Russell to Elton John. Every city, town, and village in Canada has some amount of local live music capacity and therefore the ability to benefit from it. We'll draw people back into our downtowns. We'll enhance tourism as audiences reintegrate travel and hospitality through live music experiences. We'll put more Canadian artists on stage than ever before. We know that the potential and power of live music can be fully realized through the modernization of programs and policies, embracing live music entrepreneurs as stakeholders, and harnessing their direct impact on an artist's ability to succeed. COVID picked winners and losers. We know that. The live music industry of tomorrow is being built today on sheer determination and the understanding that artists need live music businesses not just to survive, but to thrive. We've asked government through our pre-budget submission to provide a dedicated, permanent $50 million Canadian live music support fund, because if there's one thing we've learned above all else, it's that live performance is fundamental to an artist's ability to build and sustain a career. Sadly, we don't have to look very far to see that today.
1 minute.
Canadian heritage programs should change to reflect the way industry works, so that we can revitalize and rebuild the touring framework in this country that we know our artists both need and deserve. And that starts with all live music businesses, entrepreneurs, and organizations being celebrated and supported as playing a vital role in the cultural, civic, and economic lives of all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now move to Mervish Productions Limited. Kendra Bateau, Associate General Manager. I'm sorry, Kendra, if I pronounce it, is it Bateau or Bater?
It's Bater.
Bater. Thank you, Ms. Bater. For 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Clerk. My name is Kendra Bater, and I'm representing Mervish Productions, Canada's largest commercial theatre producer. Together with Michael Rubinoff and the Canadian Commercial Theatre League, we have submitted a brief on the state of the Canadian commercial theatre sector. You've heard from our partners in the labour and not-for-profit theatre sectors of the tremendous losses, challenges, and risks, not only financial, suffered by the live arts industry since theatres were shut down in March 2020. We are requesting short and long-term supports that will contribute to the rebuilding and sustained health of the commercial theatre sector. Access to emergency funding, government-backed insurance schemes to replace the business interruption coverage we can no longer secure for pandemic-related loss, development of tax credit programs to incentivize the development and production of live theatre within our borders, support for encouraging diverse voices in our sector, and implementation of the recommendations proposed by the Creative Industries Coalition so that skilled people that make theatre have financial security. We are grateful for the opportunity to participate in programs offered to all Canadian business owners and employers. CEWS, CERS, and HASCAP loans have helped us keep our offices open. However, these supports do not assist with reopening our theaters. And despite assertions and conversations with all levels of government that our sector makes significant contributions and acknowledgement that we have fallen through the cracks in the distribution of aid, these assertions have not been validated with actual financial aid. You can imagine our frustration and disenchantment when, in one such conversation in which we asked why our colleagues in the not-for-profit sector benefit from emergency grants from the federal government when the commercial theater sector has received none for the same activities, we were told that the impression is that commercial theater doesn't produce Canadian stories or contribute to Canadian culture. I'm here today to tell you a Canadian story. Mirvish Productions owns and operates 4 theaters in Toronto, Canada, and produces and presents internationally celebrated works, sometimes written by Canadian playwrights, composers, and lyricists, sometimes performed by Canadian actors and musicians, always enjoyed by Canadian audiences, employing Canadian theatre practitioners and driving Canadian tourism. Over the last 35 years, Mirvish Productions has employed thousands of Canadian actors, stagehands, theatre practitioners and administrators, ushers, and box office personnel, invested millions of dollars in Canadian plays and musicals, offered education programming to tens of thousands of students in the form of workshops, study guides, post-performance talkbacks, and tours. When Mirvish Productions is operating all 4 of its theaters, it welcomes more than 50,000 audience members per week. Ticket sales to productions at our theaters have generated tens of millions of dollars in tax revenue and billions of dollars in economic activity in the neighboring restaurants, hotels, retail, and other sports and cultural institutions. We accomplish this with private money and revenue from ticket sales. There's no contributed income in commercial theater operations. If there's no box office revenue, there's no income. When Mirvish Productions closed its theaters, for the first time in the family's history of owning and operating the theaters in March 2020, the company's revenue was wiped out. It was not until after Come From Away closed in 2021, after a brief reopening, that the outreach began to flow back to us. And since that time, we have had many conversations and for the first time feel as though we are being heard and valued. We now look to the upcoming production of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the only production in Canada of this internationally acclaimed play. It will take $28 million to mount and another $850,000 a week to run. This is not a Canadian play, but it is a Canadian production. On a weekly basis, it will employ 35 actors, 39 stagehands, 7 stage managers, 35 front of house personnel, 10 marketing, publicity, and production personnel, all Canadian. It will welcome more than 12,000 audience members each week, 95% of whom will be Canadian, and more than 50% of whom will then spend money on Canadian restaurants and Canadian hotels and retail outlets. This production and the Canadian jobs, tourism, spending, and tax revenue is imperiled by the heightened risks we now face. We implore you to implement the recommendations in our briefing, and we implore you to partner with us to craft a Canadian story about the rebuilding and brilliant reopening of the Canadian commercial theatre sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to move now to a Professional Association of Canadian Theatres, to Boomer Stacey, Executive Director, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee for undertaking this necessary examination. My name is Boomer, and I'm the Executive Director of the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres. PACT is a collective voice of professional Canadian theatres representing over 160 professional theatre companies across the country, as well as supporting the needs of the English-speaking theatre community. Our sector is diverse, ranging from the largest performing arts organization in Canada to small independent theatre artists, from rural to urban, from festivals to theatre for young audiences, from culturally diverse to Indigenous, all serving audiences in diverse communities from coast to coast to coast. We are grateful for every dollar that is being made available to help our sector survive and the speed at which the government has responded. We would not still be standing without the support that we've received as a community. We ask you to continue the investment for our survival as we look towards recovery. I know that you've heard on many occasions that our sector was the first to shut down and that we expect to be among the last to recover. You know, we have faced unprecedented and extended closures of theaters and cancellation of productions, including, of course, Come From Away, resulting in massive layoffs, underemployment, unemployment, and loss of skilled trades workers. You're aware of the ripple effect on restaurants, parking, hotels, et cetera, and the massive loss of regional revenues negatively affected by our closures. You know that we've been through several cycles of lockdown, limited capacities, and attempts to reopen. You might know that we face audience hesitancy in returning to venues and lack of confidence in buying tickets. You may also know we are experiencing severe burnout in trying to survive and are facing a growing mental health crisis in our sector. And so perhaps you understand a little of where we're currently at. I want to dig just a little bit further into the nuances of some of our challenges to give you a deeper understanding of our road to recovery from our current state of survival. We are not a light switch industry. From artistic development to on stage in front of an audience can take months to years to achieve. Even with a predetermined lineup of productions waiting to happen, from contracting, hiring, rehearsing to actual opening night takes minimum a month, with additional time for marketing and box office. Lockdowns, local restrictions, capacity limits all affect when that clock starts on production. We don't have products sitting on a shelf ready to go. One size does not fit all. Part of the strength of our sector is our diversity, but it also requires solutions and support to be equally diverse, flexible, and sometimes tailored to meet subsector specific needs. In order to get federal support out the door quickly, most of it has flown through Heritage and Canada Council for the Arts. For companies not currently on CCA or Heritage funding, it has been difficult or impossible to access funds. Many of these companies represent traditionally underfunded, marginalized artists and companies. Additional funding is required in order to expand greater access to the funds. There are over 50 companies across the country that create work solely and specifically for young audiences. Touring into schools or schools traveling to venues is currently impossible. These companies already face a challenging financial model with less revenue realized through ticket sales and now face even greater strain and a disconnect from their audiences. Likewise, there's also a robust national contingent of festival or summer season theaters. The specific seasonality of their operations often makes funding metrics impossible to achieve. Finally, there is no normal. The only certainty is continued uncertainty. Live streaming and digital opportunities have become part of our menu, but cannot replace the hunger for live and in person. Audience confidence in buying tickets in advance is at an all-time low, making traditional subscriptions and advanced ticket sales less reliable. Last minute or walk-up sales affect company cash flow, forecasting, as well as creating operational challenges. Likewise, the nature of seasons is being redefined. Traditionally sales-rich holiday shows between November and January are being reconsidered based on past 2 years' peak in virus waves and subsequent cancellations. Full season programming from September to June is also risky, so instead shorter programming periods is being considered. This affects touring, less pre-sales opportunity, and greater marketing challenges, as well as the challenge in attracting workforce back with shorter term contracts. This is a very short overview of just some of our current and ongoing challenges. And while we may look forward to recovery, we're still very much mired in survival mode.
Thank you, Mr. Stacey. Perhaps you have 15 seconds if you want to wrap up.
Thanks, I'm wrapped.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you, and I go to the final witness, and that is Sophie Préjean, who is president of the Union des Artistes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Sophie Préjean. I have been the president of the Union des Artistes since 2013. At UDA, we represent 13,000 artists who are dancers, opera singers, popular singers, actors, and comedians, to name a few. We represent professional artists working in French in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada, as well as all artists working in a language other than English. Thank you for inviting me to appear today and for your attention to the situation of artists. The situation is widely documented in the media. I would like to present some numbers. Point of order, Madam Chair. I apologize for interrupting, but Ms. Préjean's camera doesn't seem to be on.
Perhaps we can look after that. No, she's there now.
Merci.
She's there. Thank you.
Merci, désolé d'être.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting. Thank you, Mr. Shampoo. It was my fault. I had forgotten to turn my camera back on. I'm sorry. I will continue. Thank you, Mr. Shampoo. So, the reality of the artists that we represent. Comparing the year 2021 to 2019, which is a pre-pandemic year, we see that performing artists' revenues have decreased by 46%. I repeat, 46%. That's huge for self-employed people who, on average, make between $16,000 and $26,000 a year. So you can imagine what 46% less would mean. In January 2021, we completed a study on the psychological health of our members to get the real story. 61% said that they had lost interest in their art. You know, when you don't do your art and the phone isn't ringing, it's very difficult to keep your personal convictions. 35% sought help for psychological distress. 35%. And sadly, about 15% had suicidal thoughts during this time. 47% have considered or are considering leaving the arts in the long term. Nearly half. The impacts on psychological health are significant and sometimes irreversible. What scares us even more is that the worst is yet to come, probably. Artists have had access to CERB, to the CRB, and the CWLB, but we know that at the end of February, all of that comes to an end. What will happen to those artists who still need help? In our opinion, the worst effects are just beginning to be felt. For example, we are seeing people withdrawing from their RRSPs just to be able to pay their rent and pay for food for their families. So that brings us to measures to support the recovery. First, to ensure the transition towards recovery, we believe that major efforts will have to be made to win back audiences for artists, poetry, dance, music, opera, theater. Canadians have learned to entertain themselves differently over the past 2 years. Good habits are unfortunately lost quickly, and yet the pre-pandemic years were beating audience records. The real recovery will therefore be through direct and transitional support for artists, yes, but also for the cultural institutions that present and produce the artistic works of our members. Collectively, we will have to reclaim our culture. Secondly, a solid and sustainable revival of arts and culture will inevitably require recognition of the work of artists. When I say recognition, I mean the creation of a form of employment insurance that is accessible to self-employed workers and adapted to their situation. It is imperative to create a social protection plan for artists and to ensure that non-standard and contract workers have the right to an adequate social safety net. When a crisis occurs like this one, or when they experience economic difficulties due to loss of income. So in conclusion, we are only beginning to understand what the worst long-term consequences of the pandemic will be for culture and the arts and those who make them. Personally, I have tremendous fears for our future, for our culture. Too many people are saying that they are going to change careers. Yet it is creators who are at the heart of culture and the soul of our society. Without creators, there is no culture. Without creators, there is no recovery. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madame Préjean.
Those are startling statistics, but thank you. And now we're going to move to the question and answer session. Members of different parties will ask questions, and the amount of time allocated is for the question and the answer. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that, and I will continue to sort of give you a heads up on whether you got 30 seconds or 1 minute left to go. And so I'm going to begin, but before I do, there is a member of Parliament in the room. He is the Member of Parliament for Spadina, Fort York. He is not a member of the committee. I just wanted everyone to be aware that he is in the room. Now, I will go to the question and answer session. And the first is a Conservative Party for 6 minutes. Mr. Nater, John Nater.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses as well. This has been, once again, a very informative panel, and I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have today. I wanted to begin with Mr. Rubinoff and Ms. Bader. I think we all appreciate the somewhat cruel irony that the most successful Canadian musical in history is being shown at 4 productions internationally, and none of those locations is Canada. So I think we appreciate that cruel, unfortunate reality that we see with such a wonderful production. I remember promising my wonderful wife after the 2019 election that I would take her to see Coming From Away, and I may have to find an alternate location, but hopefully we can do that once again in Toronto in the somewhat near future. But I wanted to start with the capital costs. We're talking about commercial theatre and the capital costs that you must raise to begin the production before a single actor steps onto the stage, those upfront costs. And I just want to get your thoughts on the hesitancy, the stigma, the uncertainty that we have going forward to be able to raise those private funds to put on the productions in the first place. What is the reaction you're getting? What's the challenge you're facing when you have that uncertainty in raising the capital?
Michael, would you like to begin?
Go ahead, Kendra. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, commercial theater is always a risky endeavor because it is all private capital, and because you do rely solely on box office income to not only meet your weekly needs, but to return that initial capital. We're facing increasing risk because of rolling shutdowns that we're seeing happen in other markets because of COVID-19 illness. They're having to shut down for a week or more at a time and then reopen. We're also seeing increased risk because of the lack of insurance that we've mentioned in our briefings and in our conversation today, where we can no longer get coverage for business interruption due to pandemic-related loss. We're also seeing increased risk because our vendors and other people we work with are also feeling pressure and experiencing increased risk. So we are being asked for guarantees of months of weekly rentals at a time from our vendors who are having to purchase equipment in order to fulfill our needs. So there's more and more risk, but fewer and fewer assurances that we'll be able to continue operating. And then if you add capacity restrictions on top of that, the entire endeavor really does just crumble, because we need the opportunity to operate at 100% in order to be able to meet our weekly needs.
Mr. Nader, if I may very briefly, the other issue around that in terms of stimulating this industry is competitiveness. We are competing against New York State. We're competing against the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago, Louisiana, Ohio, that have implemented robust tax credits for 20 to 25% on labor and capital costs. That makes us a very unattractive destination to invest private money to start productions here that could start with employing a number of Canadians. So we're at a competitive disadvantage. State of New York, they have a $200 million tax credit, or proposed, to help come out of COVID-19 for commercial theater productions on Broadway, because they see the need to continue to make New York a destination. So that's another challenge we face.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rubinoff, and that actually leads into my next question about the tax credits we see here in Canada for television and film productions that aren't available for live performances, so whether it's commercial theater sector or whether it's the not-for-profit theater sector that we see as well. Would aligning tax credits and provided the similar type of tax credits that are available for film and television be something that would allow the commercial theater sector to have at least a little bit more certainty going forward?
It would make a huge difference. We've seen the incredible film and television business that's done in this country because of provincial and federal tax credits. It's a world leader, and it's just getting stronger and stronger. For us, we know we're a small sector. We're trying to continually expand. That tax credit would make an enormous difference to getting Canadian stories not only on our stages, but launching them around the world, beginning them at home. That's not just good for our industry, it helps drive tourism. We've seen what Come From Away has done for tourism in Newfoundland and Labrador. So if we could find a structure that's similar to film and television that could either extend or complement the commercial theater sector, I think that would be an incredible start. And we all know that these commercial shows can revitalize our cities, our smaller communities, and I think it would drive a lot more Canadian stories like Come From Away, originating from this country and then going out to be an international success.
1 minute, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And talking about that economic impact, for every dollar that's spent on a ticket sale, how does that translate into the economic impact within the community where that production takes place?
It translates, thank you, Representative Nader. It translates into an additional $10 in spending. For every dollar spent on a commercial theater ticket, an additional $10 is spent in the local economy, which translates over time into billions of dollars in economic activity.
Thank you, and I'm sure I've only got a couple seconds left, but to Mr. Stacey...
31
seconds, okay. To Mr. Stacey, you mentioned about the underfunding in the past, because certain of your member theaters, some of which are in my riding, Drayton and Stratford, hadn't in the past received funding through the Canada Council of the Arts. So if you just in a few seconds just elaborate on that, how that has put theaters at a disadvantage if they hadn't previously received funding through that mechanism.
7 seconds to elaborate.
I'll just say really quickly that there's so many companies across the country that can't access that funding because they traditionally haven't had access to it. And so those that have got funding in the past are much more likely to get that money. And so companies that are already behind pre-pandemic are further behind now.
Thank you very much. And that's the end of that round. And I will now move to for the Liberal Party of Canada, Tim Lewis, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for being here today and this important conversation and impactful statements that you've already made. We know that the arts sector is going to be the one last to recover, and the cruelty is that by nature, artists are what brings people together. That's what the sector that does that. So, and a pandemic is preventing it. So I'd like to start my questioning with the Canadian Live Music Association, which, everyone thinks of as the musicians themselves, but it's also the venues, the festivals, the clubs, the performing arts centers, the promoters and agencies. So, in the beginning, it was CERB and the CRB, wage subsidy. We had CEBA for loans, interest-free loans, and then also the recovery, relief and recovery fund for funding as well. But we want to make sure how we can continue that funding. So recently we just announced the Canada Performing Arts Workers Resilience Fund, and that's going to go to organizations to help support, especially those independent and self-employed workers in the sector itself. So can you explain how you can kind of get that funding right down to the ground as organizations for the Arts Workers Resilience Fund and get that to the self-employed and those gig workers in the live performance sector?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for the question and for that 60 million through that fund. As I understand it, Canadian Heritage's plan is to receive applications from organizations with capacity to deliver. I actually convened a meeting of the music industry on Friday to talk about the concept of submitting a super application so that I strongly believe that the fewer applications that go into this program, the better, so that the vast majority of money can be spent in the community and not on admin costs, and that we can relieve the potential burden of double dipping, etc. Like the schematic of the program, I think, will be really sound as long as we are all working together. And I'm actually looking at some of my theater colleagues like Boomer on this call, because I know there are other large organizations who are probably working to support their disciplines in the music industry. We're hoping to work with the Unison Fund, and I'm certainly Quebec partners as well. And perhaps Quebec partners will submit their own application, whatever makes the most sense for the artists and the workers. But the plan is to make these applications with the March 4th deadline, with a really strong plan, and as soon as possible start administering that $2,500 per worker.
Understood. Thank you for that. I'm going to try and bounce my questions around and go to Ms. Reeves. They're very interesting, the arts response tracking survey. And previous witnesses have talked about obstacles to participation as we get back into the theaters, how people need to have that confidence. And mostly right now, your survey says the safety and being exposed to the virus is the top obstacle, and those precautions that people are going to need to feel safe. Can you give some examples how we can help with the messaging, how we can help with funding? What can we do to get, when the time comes that we can get back? What can we do to help out?
Thank you. We do find that people want to continue to have masking. Social distancing are key for people's comfort level, but also a large percentage still just want to see a lower case count of COVID, and that is going to determine when they feel comfortable returning. But additionally, in terms of being able to start that messaging around the safety of these venues, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, that the arts community knows their own audience, that if there is funds to be dedicated for marketing and PR efforts, I think it should be an industry-led approach, so that those funds can be allocated targeted and at niche audiences. There is also an existing annual national public engagement and awareness campaign about the value of arts and culture that's called Culture Days. That could also receive more resources and support for a more blanket Canada-wide approach. And then thirdly, I think it's really crucial to keep in mind that most Canadians really trust our public health officials. And so hearing from them talk about the safety of arts and culture venues would have a big impression, and also to emphasize the value for our well-being, both physical and mental health. If that was coming from public health officials, that would carry a lot of influence.
Fantastic. Thank you. If I can stay with you.
You have 1 minute again, Tim. You still have time. Go ahead.
I can do that. You know what? We're talking quickly about partnership between private businesses and arts. I know you've got promoting an organization called Arts Fest, or a program called Arts Fest. Can you explain ways we could help leverage private sector support for the arts?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you're aware of our Arts Fest program. It is a national mentorship training and matching fund program. Annually, we have over 350 organizations from across the country that participate in that, and they receive one-on-one mentorship, group training, and peer training, but then also paired with small matching fund that they can use as an incentive to go out and develop relationships with businesses in their local community. Through that program, which receives funding from Canadian Heritage, we have produced 20,000 hours of training, and 5,000 organizations over the 10 years have participated. So really huge impact. But yeah, those kind of programs where we foster and develop collaboration and partnership between the for-profit and not-for-profit sector can really help to create market-led or market-driven solutions.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Mm-hmm. And I will go now to the Bloc Québécois, Monsieur Champoux, Martin Champoux, for six minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To begin, I'd like to highlight something that was said earlier by Ms. Bader. In response to Mr. Nader's question, you talked about the economic benefits of culture. It's something that we don't discuss often enough. We don't highlight enough the fact that culture is not an expense, it's wealth. And I really appreciated, Ms. Bader, that you talked about the economic benefits of investing in culture and how investing in culture brings more money into the economy. So thank you, Mr. Nader, for asking that question. I'd like to talk a bit with Ms. Préjean from the UDA. Your opening statement really shook me. The numbers you provided are striking. You talked about the drop in revenue and income, and you talked about the distress and of the members of the UDA and all workers in this sector, really. And based on your survey, 15% had suicidal thoughts. I want to add another number. Out of the 13,000 members that you represent at the UDA, that means nearly 2,000 people had suicidal thoughts. That's stunning. I don't want to go too far down that path, but it's very concerning. Ms. Préjean, you talked about winning back audiences, bringing people back to culture. I found there was something encouraging there because the last time we talked at this committee, we talked about the crisis we were in and ways we had to find to get through this crisis. And now I see that even though things aren't great, we're starting to look at how we can see a recovery in the cultural sector. Do you see that in a similar way? Well, things are changing. That's good. Since last Monday in Quebec, we've started opening up a little bit. And on February 28th, for arts and culture, it will be like before the pandemic, full capacity, with masks, with the vaccine passport, but we'll be able to fill our halls, which is wonderful. But it's not because we can that we will. So that's why we need to win audiences back. When people have been spending their cultural money differently for 2 years, digitally, for example, we'll have to be extremely sexy, if you'll allow that expression. We'll have to seduce people back so we can win back those audiences that we had before the pandemic. So we'll need help with that. We'll need the state's help at all levels, for dance, for opera. Good, healthy habits of seeking out culture and poetry. It is easy to leave behind. People can end up just on their phones, on their screens. So we need to reclaim that culture, and that's essential. You said earlier that programs that are drawing to an end is a major concern if we want to have artists who want to carry out their career and live from their passion. Artists who are concerned about financial instability won't be able to produce in the same way. So there's probably a balance we need to find. And that's a little bit the goal of the study. We're looking for recommendations to ensure that artists can get through what's left of the pandemic. We'll hope there's not much left, but for the recovery as well. And I imagine that will be part of the recommendations. Yes, exactly. If we see an exodus of talent, we'll suffer the worst consequences in the coming years. So one of the first things we need to do is retain talent, retain artistic and creative potential. We need to convince artists to stay in this sector by providing hope and predictability. We need to support them financially and allow them to create once again. When you talk about financial support, my colleague Tim Lewis earlier talked about the Resilience Fund that was announced. How will the UDA use that program, that funding? Have you started looking into that? Yes. Yes, of course. $60 million. 1 minute. So how will that $60 million be spent? Who will it go to? Right now, it's very hard to assess because I don't know who will be requesting it, how much will be distributed to whom. But we have the Artist Foundation. It's not just for our members, but for all creative sectors, for audiovisual, performing arts. So I think through our foundation, we will be able to reach a wide range of our artists who need support right now. In a few seconds, do you know if many requests have been made? There must be a lot of people who've already raised their hand because artists have been without financial support for months. I would imagine so, Mr. Champoux. There must be many institutions in Quebec, Francophone institutions, that will be requesting it. We will just go through our foundation. The union decided not to have specific requests for its members, but for all of the cultural sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was excellent. I would now move on to Mr. Julian for the New Democratic Party. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to all of our witnesses for your very eloquent presentations today. And we certainly hope that you and your families and loved ones are staying safe and healthy through this pandemic. I'm going to save a question for Madame Présidente for the next round, but I'd like to ask one after the other, Mr. Rubinoff, Ms. Reeves, Aaron Benjamin, Ms. Bader, Mr. Stacey. I'd like you to take not more than a minute to tell us what the consequences would be for not acting. You've put forward numerous suggestions that are very important. If the government didn't act and didn't provide these supports, what can we expect from your sector in the course of the coming years? And I'll start with Mr. Rubinoff.
First and foremost, if you look at the downtown cores, I live in Toronto. I'm very worried about bringing people back to the downtown core. Arts and culture does that. Secondly, I'm very worried about people, as my colleagues have said. We have incredible skilled Canadians that work on stage and off. I'm really worried they're going to other professions. And if we lose them, we lose our industry.
Thank you very much. Ms. Reeves.
Very much echo what Michael just said. I'm very concerned about labor market issues. We don't have hard data yet, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that there is an exodus happening in the art sector. People are leaving for more predictable work, reliable work, better paid work. So we need to be able to address those things to retain talent. I'm not just talking about artists, I'm also talking about the administrators. And I'm also really concerned about those who are left behind, holding the bag. They now have more work loads. They are very stressed, being able to accomplish everything that they have to do to be able to do that recovery. So people are really stretched. They're very burnt out.
Thank you very much, Aaron Benjamin.
Thank you. I think we're all going to be adding on here, so I'll try and add some new things. A massive contraction of the Canadian live music industry would result in a reduction of billions of dollars in economic activity. The global concert industry was projected, North American concert market was projected to see $5 billion in ticket revenue, ticket sales alone in the beginning of 2020. It's a massive mega billion-dollar industry that so all of that money will be gone. We will lose the opportunity to intersect with all of the other businesses that we connect with so well: hospitality, travel, tourism, the restaurants, the Uber, the corner store, the parking lot, the public transportation that we take to attend these concerts, the restaurants we eat when we get to them. And then I would add that the Canadian brand is incredibly tarnished when in the live music. Our counterparts around the world consider Canada closed for business. Many of our major tours, which were postponed, if they can't find time in the calendar, they are not coming back in 2022. The perception out there now is that we're closed until 2023. We still have time to overcome that, but it's the loss is, it's immeasurable.
And you'd expect the closing of facilities as well, right?
And then some. The exodus of skilled labor from the sector, the obviously inability of artists to continue to create, the cultural infrastructure. We've already seen the contraction, the disintegration. It's like chunks of an iceberg falling off into the ocean.
Thank you, Ms. Bader.
Thank you. I think we would be looking at the collapse of Canadian commercial theatre production as opposed to presentation. Already every day we're making decisions on whether to import something from the UK or from the United States or whether to grow something at home. And as that becomes more and more risky, and as other markets have tax credit programs and insurance schemes that lure productions to those states or to those countries, we're not competitive, and there will be a threshold beyond which we can no longer take the risk. And we've talked about the economic development, the jobs, the mental health, the culture, the education programs, all of that goes away with it. And we become just presenting other people's work instead of nurturing our own.
Thank you. And Mr. Stacey.
Sorry, thank you. Just to echo everything my colleagues have said, a collapse of the theater sector, definitely a loss of venues, a loss of companies, a loss of artists, a huge loss in the diversity of Canadian stories being told, and I think an increase in mental health crisis, both in the professional community as well as in the public. We know that the public goes to the arts to boost themselves, and with less art available, we'll see an impact in Canadian society, I truly believe.
1 minute left, Peter.
Yeah, Mr. Stacey. So when you're both you and Ms. Bader were talking about collapse, what does that mean in terms of closing facilities? Would you expect to see a number of theaters closing forever, members of your association?
Absolutely. We already have members who are on the brink. Omicron pushed people even closer. We can't keep riding that roller coaster. Companies have survived mainly based on emergency funds that have been available. If and when that ceases, as Aubrey said in her presentation, 3 to 5 years to recover. Like the vaccination program, it's not one and done. We need a constant influx of boosters into the sector to keep us going, to see us through.
And I can see that happening in the long term in the commercial sector. And in the short term, I think we'd be looking at what those spaces are used for. Throughout the course of the pandemic, movie studios were able to rent our theaters and capture content and broadcast it, but theater production was not able to. And I know that that is a separate issue. But
thank you, Ms. Bader. You can elaborate on that in the next round. Now, I want to thank everyone. We're moving into the second round of questions. And this is, of course, a 5-minute round. And I would like to begin with Ms. Rachel Thomas from the Conservative Party for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sure, my question is for Mr. Rubinoff and Ms. Bader. In your submission to the committee, you stated that in the summer of 2021, you had an opportunity to sit down with officials at Heritage. And you said that during that meeting, staff from the ministry articulated that the prevailing opinion at Heritage was that commercial theatre did not contribute to Canadian culture. I do find that particularly interesting and somewhat troubling. So I'm just wondering if you can expand on that a little bit, especially in light of the play Come From Away and the dramatic impact that it has had in other countries. Perhaps you care to comment, Mr. Rubinoff?
You know, we haven't gone to Heritage in the past. You know, we've been independent as a sector, and at this moment in time, we needed help. As we've said, we continue to need help. And I think there's just a historical practice of not supporting our sector. And potentially what was explained to us in that one meeting was this lack of contribution. And yes, you know, as Kendra laid out in terms of some of our shows are written by Canadians. A number of commercial productions have pushed Canadian work, Come From Away being a prime example. Other shows may not be by Canadian playwrights, but they still engage Canadian actors, Canadian crews, and Canadian staff. So we've been engaged in an education process about exactly what we do and our contribution. And we hope this historical narrative will change. And this is a moment where we can leverage that to have that change, because two things can happen. One is we can get those supports. And the second thing that happens when we get that support and we have that shift, we're going to have so many more Canadian stories being told by Canadians, leveraged at home and around the world.
So, Mr. Rubinoff, I guess just to follow up on that quickly, then, you know, if there was one message that you could send then concerning, you know, the definition of Canadian content and its support by the Heritage Minister, what would that one message be?
We've got the best storytellers in the world. Canadians have an incredible lens in which to tell stories, and they're able to tell those stories on the commercial stage. And there should not be a delineation between not-for-profit and for-profit when we're in crisis. Other English-speaking territories like the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom made sure that both those sectors were important and made sure both those sectors were supported. There's no distinction between a Canadian commercial actor and a Canadian not-for-profit actor or crew member or ticket taker. These are Canadians. We need to support them, and I hope that Heritage will further explore that and look at it as a greater community and what the impact we all can make.
That's great. Ms. Bader, I'm just going to reframe the question just a little bit for you, if you don't mind. Every minister receives a mandate letter from the Prime Minister, in other words, a letter of direction. And so in the Minister for Heritage, in his letter, he was directed as follows. It says, as the Minister of Canadian Heritage, your immediate focus will be to ensure artists and cultural industries have the supports they need to recover from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm wondering, given your experience, is the mandate of this letter being fulfilled, or is there much more to do? And if there is much more to do, how would you briefly define that?
I think there is much more to do. I think that these conversations are certainly a helpful beginning. And as we referenced in our statement, we've been having many of them of late. And I would say that in defining culture and therefore a cultural mandate, it's important for us to remember that it's not just what's happening on stage that defines the cultural activity. It is the activity of going to the theater. It is the cultural activity of participating on that on stage, backstage, in front of house. And so the Canadian story is all of that activity, not just the ones that are being written down and then sung on stage. And I think that needs to be more detailed in the mandate and in the activities that come out of it.
Ms. Bader, do you feel that the government has overlooked your sector?
I think to Michael's point, we have not advocated for ourselves in the past. And when we were plunged into this crisis along with everyone else, we were starting at a very different point in conversation. We've been grateful to be heard. We've been grateful that people have returned our calls and emails and that they continue to do so. And we want to partner with the government to create supports that will last beyond this crisis, because it's not just about getting out of the crisis, but it's sustaining the industry after. So I think there's a lot of work to do, and I think we all have to do it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bader. You can expand on that with the next question, I'm sure. So now we go to the Liberals for 5 minutes. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'm so excited to see everybody here today because I absolutely am passionate about theater. Sometimes you have to start by bragging about your riding. And when I was mayor of Côte St. Luc, along with the current mayor, Mitchell Brownstein, we founded the Côte St. Luc Dramatic Society to give young actors in our area, many of whom have gone on to Sheridan College in Toronto, the chance to act, the chance to do backstage work, and the chance for West End audiences to see English theater in Montreal. And we happen to have won the Montreal English Theater Awards for 4 out of the last 5 years before the pandemic for Cabaret, Joseph and the Multicolored Dreamcoat, Hairspray, and the producers that we put on in conjunction with the Segal Center, which is also in my riding. So last time we were doing this type of a study, Lisa Rubin, who is the incredible executive director of the Segal Center, was here. And she talked about the support that some government programs had indeed offered to the industry, such as the wage subsidy, the lease subsidy, the CERB that's helped individual performers. And now, of course, we have the $60 million Resilience Fund. So there are things generally that have helped the industry, but I want to talk about how we can use this as an opportunity. How can we use this as an opportunity to recognize how we've supported other industries and we haven't supported theater in Canada so that Toronto can compete with New York, Chicago, and London, and that there's English theater like that in Montreal, Vancouver, Halifax, Ottawa, and other major cities, and Francophone theater, not only in Montreal, but in Ottawa, Moncton, and other parts of Canada where there's significant audiences. So let's talk about tax credits, first of all. You talked about the UK tax credits. Have there been any provinces in Canada that the federal government can look toward that has done anything with respect to tax credits and incentives to help theater? And if not, what foreign jurisdiction, whether Australia, the UK, a state in the US, should we look to as an example of what we should do on tax credits and incentives?
If I may, first of all, Siegel Center is a prime example, and Lisa Rubin is a prime example of an extraordinary leader and an extraordinary theater where commercial theater producers has partnered with the Siegel Center to take on and test out commercial work. We do not have any provinces in the country right now that have tax credits for theater. Obviously, the film and television is a harmonized federal with certain provinces. I think the state of Illinois, obviously the state of New York, are wonderful examples to look at. Ohio's a little unique in that they did a program where they merged their film and television with theater. These tax credits are 20 to 25% on labor and in some cases on production materials, but they are really anchored in labor. And they make a considerable difference, and they all have different limits on them, but incentives of up to $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million makes a huge difference when your risk is so significant, and you have all of that risk through box office revenue. That sort of assistance, that sort of partnering really will stimulate our industry significantly.
Thank you. Et Madame Préjean, si je demande la...
Ms. Préjean, if I asked you the same question about theatre in Quebec, Francophone theatre throughout Canada, is there the same type of demand that we should use tax credits? You're on mute.
No, I was talking to Madame Préjean. I was telling her she was on mute. Sorry, Mr. Rubinoff.
Oui, merci de me ramener.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. I can't really answer, but I could find information. On tax credits, I have friends who are theater directors, Francophone. I'm sure I could obtain information that could be useful to you. If you give me a few hours, I can find that, or perhaps tomorrow. But that could be a type of assistance. There has been assistance during the pandemic for box offices. That was really helpful and helped theaters stay afloat with a small audience that came to see artists. But on a longer term basis, yes, we could think of measures that could stay in place. We could learn something from the pandemic. 100%.
Left, Mr. Housefather.
Thank you. So one last question, because again, I'm completely in favor of the idea of doing for this sector what we're doing for other sectors. I guess either Ms. Bader or Mr. Rubinoff, do you believe that part of the issue, of course, again, that you haven't previously come to ask for this type of support, but do you believe that the fact that the industry is partially, in the sense of large productions, so centered in Toronto, has been part of the issue that other parts of Canada haven't supported pushing this type of support for the sector because the industry is essentially so concentrated in Toronto?
I don't know that I would characterize it that way. Broadway across Canada is one of our partners in commercial theater, and they present commercial touring productions across the country. It's perhaps that activity is not to the same extent, but it does exist and it is robust. I do think that, again, we haven't advocated for ourselves. These issues about tax credits, though, predate the COVID-19 crisis. And there has been discussion in the media about the battle between Chicago and Toronto and where productions go. So this is years long.
Please wrap up your answer.
This has been years long, and it's not a recent topic of conversation.
Thank you. And thanks again for all that you guys do.
Thank you, everyone. And now for the Bloc Québécois for 2.5 minutes, Mr. Champoux.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Préjean, you talked earlier about a topic that I care a lot about, the eligibility of artists and cultural workers to programs like EI and social safety nets. It's a topic that comes up often. We're going to be doing a study at this committee on the status of artists at the federal level. There's one in Quebec that you're familiar with that is due for review itself. Yes, a reform. The measures you propose, what positive impact would they have had if they were in place at the time of the pandemic? the benefits we saw, like CERB, CRB, CWLB, the $60 million, they were created because there wasn't a safety net for artists. There was no financial support. We were in the dark. And every time one ended, another one came, but there was a gap where artists were in the dark and had nothing. So, could we plan? Could we use the pandemic to do better, to have a stable type of employment insurance where we would contribute, of course, and it could be useful in times of pandemic or when there's no income for artists. So we're saying we need to learn something from this. What it means is that the pandemic exacerbated the problem of financial support, not just for creators, all independent workers, freelancers throughout Canada. So we need to use what we've learned during the pandemic to do better. These are problems that already existed, you would agree, but it took a crisis to make people understand the scope of these problems and the potential disaster. So I'm glad we've had the opportunity to talk about it. 30 seconds. So we will probably have the opportunity to look at that at the federal level. Do you see positive impact in Quebec with that law on the status of artists? Yes, of course. So having this at the federal level with teeth? Yes, exactly. Because Quebec is protected at the provincial level with that law on the status of the artist in Quebec, but I think there is more and better that could be done with the federal law. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Ms. Pigeon. And now I go to Mr. Julian for the New Democratic Party for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Peter.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll continue with Ms. Préjean. You spoke very eloquently of the impact on artists of everything that we've been through over the past 2 years and the importance of putting in place an employment insurance policy. But can we do better to really have a solid base for artists throughout Canada? I'm talking about a basic guaranteed income, other programs that exist internationally. Are there other countries we should look at as models so we can have a decent standard of living for artists who contribute so much to our society? Yes, of course. France, for example, have cultural workers, arts workers, where there's that possibility. In France, people think you can't have an actor acting 365 days a year on the stage. There are times when the artist is employed, and sometimes they have to be preparing, going through training, creating, writing. So there are models. Thank you for highlighting that. We could take inspiration from them. We're not closed-minded. There is employment insurance, of course, but there could be something else. But we absolutely need to think of a stable measure. Thank you very much for that.
To Mr. Stacey and Ms. Bader, do you see international examples that we can use here at home that would establish a real solid base for our Canadian artists and for our Canadian theaters?
Yes, I know. Ireland has just passed something recent in support of artists. I think Aubrey has probably greater info on that than I do, but I know in Europe, there's a number of countries that do support their artists with a guaranteed income program.
Yeah, if I can jump in on the Ireland example. They just announced a few months ago they would be providing $28 million to artists and entertainers hurt by the pandemic through a basic income program. Artists are receiving approximately $400 a week for 3 years, and also venues are receiving $10,000 in grants. And the mission is really the first of its kind for entertainers in the country to support jobs and businesses in the nighttime economy is how they define it, but also to support new and emerging acts. So it is a basic income program. It is a small pilot, about 2,000 to 2,500 artists are participating, but it's a really good pilot for us to look to maybe base some other programs on in Canada.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's it. Sorry. You have 1 second if you wanted it, but now I'd like to move to the next questioner for the Conservatives, Ms. Leslyn Lewis, for 5 minutes. Ms. Lewis.
Sorry, my microphone. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Stacey Boomer. Mr. Boomer, you had spoken about the difference between the treatment of larger providers and smaller providers. And I believe I heard you say in your testimony that larger providers could access funds easier than underserviced and marginalized communities. And so I wanted you to just expand on that and just highlight some of the changes that you think we could make, that the government could make to reduce this disparity.
Sure, thank you. It's not necessarily based on size, but a lot of it is based on historical practice. And so companies that have historically benefited from funding from Canada Council, as long as they're in good standing, they continue to benefit from that. There's not a huge new influx of money coming into Canada Council. And so in order for them to expand, they need to take money away from someone else. We don't want to see that to happen. So it takes new money to ensure that new companies are benefiting from the same access to funds. And so we're seeing a huge increase in the prominence of culturally diverse IBPOC companies, queer companies, companies that are artists that are traditionally have been marginalized and are having a challenge accessing funds on a sustainable level.
Thank you. Ma prochaine question est pour...
My next question is for Ms. Préjean. Could you tell me if the COVID funds were easily accessible for freelance workers in your sector? Are you talking about the most recent fund, the CWLB? Exactly. I think it was $300. And of course, that wasn't enough. It's better than nothing. I'm not complaining. All of that assistance really benefited artists in need. Let me be clear. But that's not an adequate measure. We waited to find out if we were in lockdown, if it counted as a lockdown in Quebec. So it was difficult and longer for artists to have access to it. Fortunately, once we had access, it was retroactive. So we were able to have money, but it took time. That measure came really at the last minute. And then there were a number of weeks to have access to the money, so it was very difficult. I would say that the fifth wave for artists was really the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just so difficult. In terms of reactions and psychological distress, we had the 4 others already. And so, yes, it helped. It wasn't perfect, and it was slow in getting started. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
My next question is going back to Mr. Boomer. Mr. Boomer, what would you say are the capacity limits that theaters would need to operate at a sustainable level?
It's a very hard question. Thank you for that. We've had many members who have been able to open at 100% capacity, but because of audience lack of confidence in going, they haven't been able to achieve 100%. I think people would like to see the opportunity to open at 100%, but make their own decisions as to what capacity of tickets they're going to sell. And so I know some of our members have experimented with offering the same show one night at 50% and the next night at 100%. And so if you're a little bit leery of going with a full house, you buy a ticket to the half capacity. But people would love the opportunity to make that decision for themselves and have access to being able to sell at 100%.
Thank you. And is there a distinction between the larger theaters and the smaller theaters and the impact level that you're seeing these different venues have during COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to speak to diversity in my intro, and every company has a different issue. And so if you're a rural company, and you're trying to attract audience members from literally several hours drive away, you're facing different capacity issues than if you're in Toronto and competing against 40 or 50 other entertainment options at the same time. So we're facing a variety of different issues related to capacity and related to impact across the country.
Thank you. My next question is for Ms. Bader. I would like to hear a little bit more about just how to instill confidence in the sector. You mentioned that it will cost $28 million to produce Harry Potter. And what is the level of security measures that you feel need to be put in place in order for your industry to once again embark on such a risk?
Thank you very much for the question. We'll need partnership from all levels of government. This will be about having sustained supports in place. We need to know that if we have to close, that someone will be there to hold our hand to help us get to when we can reopen. We need messaging. We need all levels of government to be telling people that, number one, it's important to go to the theater, what it contributes to our lives, and that it's safe to go to the theater. I really think that it's the soft power of government saying how important it is, and then the actual tangible measures.
Thank you. We need to wrap up. And then the other questioner is from the Liberal Party for 5 minutes, Mr. Biddle, Chris Biddle.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for being here. I guess I would like to build on your last answer, Ms. Bader and Mr. Rubinoff. I know you spoke about tax credits, potentially insurance. Are there any other measures, or if you'd like to expand on it, that you'd like to see to assist the sector? Mr. Rubinoff first, I guess.
Sure. Those are two key ones as we who knows where things are going to go, obviously, with this pandemic. Not having access to emergency funding, it's a whole program. So if we don't have those supports, and not having access to emergency funding, it's very, very difficult to move forward. Where you saw in the American context, they received substantial aid through the American program. They don't have insurance supports and they could weather through. But you do give me an opportunity to mention and talk about, which we put in this submission. We've also seen in our industry, as the government did for film and television, provide funding for more diversity supports and inclusion supports in the industry. We would like to see that in our sector as well. So using this moment as we look forward, those supports would be great to champion a program much like film and television, where we can go out and do internships and apprenticeships, pay people to come into our industry so that we can tell the diverse stories of the country, of Canada. That would be very helpful in this moment. So I want to take the opportunity to mention that as well.
Excellent. I echo what Michael says. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. It's really the combination of things. And when you don't have the emergency funding there, then the lack of insurance is exacerbating the situation that we're in.
Thank you so much. And perhaps this is best suited for Mr. Rubinoff. I know we've talked about the benefits of the commercial theater sector to the economy in terms of money back. I know Ms. Bader spoke about that. Could either of you talk about just the overall economic impact of the sector on the economy, of the commercial theater sector, just to put it in perspective as we study this?
Yeah, It's so significant, you know, it is as a beacon of economic activity. So one, it's bringing people together in different communities and cities across the country to experience something you can't experience in your home or on your device. It's such a unique art form, and it's one we need. So the economic impact is so significant, and having those, you know, we had theaters open for about, you know, a couple of weeks. And if you walked around the downtown core in Toronto, you saw thousands of people going in the theater and then thousands of people going to use public transit, going to the restaurants, going to shop at retail, going to takeout. So that's really tangible. It put money in the hands of the actors and the artists. From a mental health perspective, and I know Stacey's spoken about it so eloquently, that really made a difference. They were waiting for 20 months to get back on the stage. So we were supporting them. In the commercial theater, through our collective bargained agreements, we pay the highest rates in the commercial theater. So that was really supportive and has an impact on the economy and an impact on allowing artists to live in cities which are becoming more and more expensive places to live. And just finally, in terms of looking at economic development, we can't take wellness out of it. People want to come back together. People want to have these unique experiences to receive a story of hope and optimism and what that means, and reflection on who we are as a community and as a people. And I think that wellness and giving people that outlet and opportunity, we cannot negate the cost of doing that.
Thank you so much. And perhaps I'll open this up a little bit more, but maybe stick with Mr. Rubinoff to start out with. Do you think the pandemic has transformed the theater industry moving forward, or is it too early to tell?
Sorry, is that to me, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Biddle?
Yes.
We're still waiting. I mean, it's transformed in that we're having these discussions. We want to see, as we move forward, are we actually going to have those tangible supports for that transformation? We're at an incredible moment. This conversation, talking to all of you, being heard, is giving us so much hope. So if we can transform that into action and programs, you are going to see that transformation.
You have 31 seconds, Mr. Biddle.
Thank you so much. Ask Mr. Stacey the same question about the do you see a transformation in the live theater industry?
Absolutely a transformation, some positive and some negative. It'll remain to be seen what stays with us. And you know, I know in the very beginning of the pandemic, we talked about this being an opportunity to change in the positive in our sector. We're still at that place where we're extremely worried about losing members of our sector, and so there's still a huge potential for us to come out of this in a much worse place.
Thank you very much. I will soon suspend the meeting, but before I do, I wanted to thank all of the witnesses for coming and spending the time and actually giving us very clear, concise directions in which we could look at writing a report and maybe getting some recommendations. So I want to thank you all, and now I will suspend the meeting for 2 minutes so that the witnesses can leave and then we can get to committee business. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like us to discuss it and see whether we support this motion or not. So pursuant to Standing Order 1087, the committee undertake a study on the history and current display of hate symbols, such as the swastika and the Confederate flag in Canada, and consider what actions Parliament may take to end or limit the display of such symbols, and that the study should be at least one meeting, and that the committee report its findings in the House. Now, I would open this up to discussion. Please raise your hand. I see Mr. Housefather's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just explain to the committee why I think this study is important. First of all of us on all sides in the House condemn these symbols. This is not a partisan study or a partisan issue. It's one where I believe we need to educate Canadians on what these symbols actually mean. Over the last little while, my office has received numbers of emails from people arguing that the swastika and the Confederate flag are not hate symbols. And what we need to actually have, I believe, is a historian come in and explain in front of us and to Canadians what these symbols actually have historically meant. And then I'd like to also suggest that the organizations representing the Black community and the Jewish community be invited to also give their take on the meaning of these symbols and how they harm the community. This is not the long study that will be done when the great legislation that Mr. Julian is proposing comes before the House. Then there'll be a lot of discussion about whether freedom of expression in Section 2 is breached, whether Section 1 saves it. I'm looking at this as being, we would say in French, une étude préalable, a small study.
A pre-study.
Educate and inform Canadians on a nonpartisan way what these symbols mean. And then it'll set it up for the House to have a larger debate on what actions it can take, including legislation to potentially deal with the symbols of hate. But I want to assure everybody, again, because there's been a lot of people making comments, this is not related to the convoy. This is not related to allegations that any member of any party supports these horrible symbols. It's something that I'm hoping we all across party lines can work together on to determine the best way of handling this and just educating Canadians through just one meeting, on this issue. And thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Anthony. Peter?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I support this motion, and I'm glad Mr. Housefather moved it forward for the reasons that he mentioned. The confusion over what these symbols mean is something that I am surprised of. I don't think there's a single member of Parliament that doesn't understand the implications, but it's important for public education that we reiterate what these symbols actually represent. I would offer a friendly amendment if Mr. Housefather is open to that, just to add after the swastika and the Confederate flag in Canada, including possible legislation and consider what actions Parliament may take. And I also, I guess, would suggest that perhaps we say the Nazi swastika, given that to Hinduism, a different type of swastika is present, and that would avoid the confusion that sometimes exists on that. But I certainly support the motion and hope that those friendly amendments are acceptable.
Thank you, Peter. We now, so you've moved that amendment officially, Peter?
No, Madam Chair, I've offered it as a friendly amendment, and it's up to
Yes.
the mover to accept it or not.
Anthony, you have anything to say?
I'm totally fine with the amendments. I don't think it changes the substance of the motion, and agree that Nazi swastika to be clear. And certainly one of the things that Parliament may do is possible legislation. So I don't think it changes the context of the motion at all. And I appreciate the suggestion. I'm totally fine with it if others are.
It's allowable. And so we're not going to take a vote on it since you have agreed to let it change. Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Housefather, for this very, very important motion. I think it's very worthwhile. And I just want to ask one question, and I'm asking it out of deep sincerity. I just want to know how you just concluded just to have two symbols, and why blackface wasn't included. And I seriously ask it out of the utmost respect for your motion. I think that identifying symbols of hate and educating Canadians about them is very, very important. And these symbols of hate should be condemned. But as a Black person, I also feel that a symbol of hate such as blackface, which is pre-antebellum, post-antebellum, and was very relevant also in Canadian history, I think that that should be added. And I'm also requesting a friendly amendment to also add that in.
Mr. Housefather?
So Madam Chairman, I guess I would answer the question as follows. I certainly condemn blackface. Blackface is abhorrent. My understanding of what blackface means is the horrendous way in minstrel shows and then following that in film and theater that white artists covered their face with black paint and pretended to be African Americans or Black Canadians, and I don't necessarily understand that to be a symbol or an emblem. And the reason I chose the words that I did was because I looked at Mr. Julian's draft bill, and I used the words that were in Mr. Julian's draft bill that is before the House, and those said including but not limited to, and this is not limiting this. I said such as the Nazi swastika and the Confederate flag, which I believe is also a symbol of hatred against Blacks. That's why I chose it. So I couldn't accept the friendly amendment only because I don't believe that's a symbol or an emblem. But I don't have certainly, in the context of the questions, Ms. Lewis, that you would ask to the witnesses, which I believe we should have the national Black organizations there. I think questions could certainly be asked to them about what they feel and how blackface makes their members feel. Because I can only imagine how hurtful it is to all Black Canadians and all right-thinking Canadians to see that.
Ms. Lewis, your friendly amendment was not accepted, so are you moving an amendment for discussion?
Yes, I would love to. And I would love to also say to Mr. Housefather that it is both a symbol and an emblem of hate. It is a symbol of chattel slavery. It is a symbol of, it is predates even the symbol of the Confederate flag, which is really relevant to the South, a post-antebellum, pre-antebellum symbol, whereas blackface transcend the entire history of African chattel slavery in North America. And so it's not just dressing up and it's not just playing theater. It is a symbol of being in bondage for Black people. And it is a mockery and a caricature of our oppression and of our suffering that we've endured. And so it's very, very serious. And so that's why I've proposed it. And it is a very hurtful symbol. And I would love for you to consider that. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, will you say where that amendment should go, where it should be inserted so that we can have people vote on the amendment?
It should be inserted right after actually, I don't have it in front of me, but after the enumeration of the Confederate flag and Nazi flag, and therefore and blackface. That's where it should be inserted.
All right. So now I will everyone clear on the amendment before we start debating it. The amendment would say that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on the history and current display of hate symbols such as the Nazi swastika and the Confederate flag in Canada, including possible legislation. It could go before including possible, and the Confederate flag in Canada and blackface. And consider what actions Parliament may take to end or limit the display. I'm allowing the amendment because it is actually not changing necessarily the intent of the motion. So, discussion, please. Mr. Shampoo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have a very interesting start to our discussion, and I've listened to the arguments of Ms. Lewis to defend her amendment. I think it's a discussion that will be interesting. Is blackface a symbol of hate? I know in theater for many years it was a way for a white actor to play a black character, and with the eyes of the time, it wasn't something that was necessarily considered to be hateful or irrespectful, but I think that discussion is very interesting to have. The type of discussion we could have as part of the study. Now, a caveat, and I'm open to the arguments, but would we add blackface at the outset? Would we designate it as a hateful symbol at the outset? I know we'll have discussions, very delicate discussions about this. Well, I'll be walking on eggshells because this is something delicate. For now, I hesitate to name it in the motion to say that blackface is a hate symbol, but I am very curious, very interested to hear from the witnesses that Ms. Lewis may invite. So I'm very interested in the discussion we'll be having about this motion. But I hesitate as to the relevance of putting blackface in the wording of the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Shampoo. Ms. Lewis, is your hand still up, or did you forget to take it down? Okay, thanks. Anthony.
Yes, so just that I understand, because I based the motion on Mr. Julian's draft bill. I'd like to ask Mr. Julian what he thinks and whether he thinks it's appropriate to add that. In which case, I would then say it's a friendly amendment. I'd like to understand from Mr. Julian, does this correspond to his draft bill and what he considers a symbol or an emblem to be?
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Julian.
Okay, thank you. The model of the bill is on symbols and emblems because of what we saw transpire a couple weeks ago on Parliament Hill, with the symbols of the Confederate flag, the symbols of the Nazi swastika on Parliament Hill. Absolutely reprehensible. I would agree with Ms. Lewis that blackface is an absolutely reprehensible practice and action. And when she raised it, I looked quickly for the issue of banning blackface. What I see is references to theater productions, television networks, the Paris Opera, all of whom have considered bans on blackface. That is important. It's different from the intent of the bill that I brought forward, which is banning the symbols and emblems that we saw so despicably displayed on Parliament Hill just 2 weeks ago. So I would say it's extraordinarily important and valuable what Ms. Lewis presents. It's a different approach, and we're talking about a different category of what is reprehensible actions than the emblems and symbols that are represented by the swastika and the Confederate flag. I certainly would like to take some time to look into this a bit more. And certainly, of course, Ms. Lewis has the opportunity to bring forward a motion like this when we're talking about actions that are used in or banned in theater, in opera, and on television networks or movies. That seems to be the extent to which the banning has taken place around blackface. A reprehensible practice that should be banned, but that is banned in live theater, in opera, and on television.
Thank you. Mr. Housefather, was your question answered?
Madam Chair?
I don't think Mr. Julian really had the answer to my question. I think we both recognize that it's a very important and a horrible practice. The question is it a symbol or emblem related to something that Parliament can end or limit the display of? I'm not 100% sure. I don't have that knowledge, and that's why I didn't put it in the original draft of the motion. I'm sure that that's why right now it says such as. What we could say is, may I make a friendly suggestion to everybody, that we undertake a study on the history of and current display of hate symbols and emblems, take out the words such as the swastika and Confederate flag, and then anyone can raise whatever hate symbols or emblems they want in the context of the study to witnesses, and we can have more time to think about what those may be. Because I don't, I don't know the answer of whether that's a symbol or an emblem. Would that be a solution that would be acceptable to everybody? Because these are just two examples of what they might be.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you. I think that the fact that we are contemplating this for educational purposes is very, very important, because it's clear that many people don't understand the historical legacy of Blackface. It was perpetuated in the theater to mock and to put Black people in their place. And that is a place of bondage and slavery. So just as somebody would come to a parade and fly a flag for intimidation, the theater was the place of mockery where people went there to degrade other human beings and to make them subhuman. So the fact that we're even contemplating it is deeply, it's both hurtful to me, and it's both enlightening and promising, because I see a future in understanding that we are down a path where we will look into just how hurtful these symbols are. So thank you. And I agree with your amendment. Thank you.
So can I consider that, would everybody consider that a friendly amendment, that we simply say hate symbols and emblems in Canada, and not to give the examples? And then when we question the historians or the witnesses that we bring, anybody can talk about any symbols or emblems that they wish to talk about. I think I've seen heads nodding, and if that's okay, Madam Chair, I hope that would be considered a friendly amendment.
Yes, I think Ms. Lewis said that she liked the amendment. So that, are you withdrawing your amendment, Ms. Lewis? And
yes,
we can just go back to this new motion now, which is a sub-amendment to the amendment. I wonder if perhaps we can then quickly, since you're withdrawing it yourself, I think maybe we can consider Mr. Housefather's sub-amendment and not vote on an amendment that has been withdrawn, if that's okay with everyone. Peter, you have something to say?
Madam Chair, Mr. Coteau's hand has been up in the room for quite some time.
Oh, I could not see Mr. Coteau in the room, Clerk. Thank you for telling me that. Mr. Coteau and then Mr. Julian.
I think it's been resolved, so I'm fine.
All right, thank you. Mr. Julian?
I think that is an appropriate solution. I just would like the revised motion to be reread.
Can I try, Peter? I'm going to try to do it including your amendments, if that's okay. So we're going to remove also the amendment adding Nazi before swastika, because we're not having that word in there anymore. So I think the appropriate wording, if everybody, Martin, je peux le faire en français après si tu veux.
Martin, I can do it in French later if you want.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on the history of and current display of hate symbols and emblems in Canada, and consider what actions Parliament may take to end or limit the display of such hate symbols and emblems, including legislation. That the study should be at least one meeting, and that the committee report its findings to the House. Martin, est-ce que tu veux que je le...
Martin, would you like me to do it in French? It's okay? Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis, for your suggestions, and Mr. Julian and Mr. Shampoo for your help all of getting this done.
Thank you. So now we do have, Peter, did you want to say anything? You're fine? You did speak your mind? Good, thanks. So then what I thought we might want to do is to look upon this as a sub-amended motion, and I will just call the question on this motion for us to move forward. Unless anyone else puts up their hand. Clerk, is everyone in the room okay on this? Okay, so then I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion carries, and so this is going to be the new motion. As read, if you wish, I could read it again, but I think, did everyone want to read again, or did Anthony read it properly for you all? Everybody's happy with Anthony's reading? Good, great, thank you, that's good. All right, so the motion is now passed, and we, again, it is at least one meeting. I may want to add a caveat that, this is not going to be one meeting, guys. If we're going to be looking at this from the broadest symbol of hate perspective that we're doing now, I think I may want to ask if somebody wanted to make an amendment well, it says at least one meeting. And I'd like you to think about it so that the next time we get together, you can decide whether you're going to want more than one meeting. So thank you very much. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Peter. Bye, everyone. And thanks again. You all worked so well as a committee. I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
Bye bye tout le monde.